There's a strange category of imagery on the internet. Hallways that lead nowhere. Gas stations lit like the inside of a fish tank. Abandoned malls soaked in fluorescent hum. Rooms with no context. Playgrounds at night. Carpet patterns so aggressively normal, they loop back into unsettling. And for some reason, we look at these empty spaces and feel something. Nostalgia, sadness, homesickness, wonder, fear. Like we're remembering a place we've never actually been. Today we're exploring that feeling, the uncanny emotional deja vu of liminal spaces, why they hit us so deeply, and why they feel like memories of lives we never lived. A liminal space is a place between things, between destinations, between contexts, between identities, a threshold. Airports at 2 a.m. Empty schools in summer. Hotel hallways with no one around. Stairwells, parking lots, laundromats, rest stops. They're not designed to be inhabited. They exist for transit, not for living. And that's what makes them eerie. When you remove the people, the purpose, the space becomes something else. It becomes a vessel for projection. You're not seeing a hallway. You're seeing every hallway you've ever walked down. And maybe every hallway you've seen only in dreams. When we look at a normal environment, a kitchen, a bedroom, our brain knows what to expect. These spaces have personal associations, smells, tasks, memories, but liminal spaces remove all personalization. There's no owner, no narrative, no identity. Your brain hates that void, so it fills in the blanks itself. This is why you might look at a picture of an empty mall and suddenly feel nostalgic for the early 2000s, or childhood, or a summer you can't quite remember. Your brain treats the space like a memory slot, waiting to be filled. It's the psychological equivalent of static noise. Your mind projects its own signal onto it. Liminal spaces act like mirrors, reflecting not what they are, but whatever you bring into them. One of the wildest parts about liminal imagery is that the absence of life makes the space feel more personal, not less. Because when nobody is there, your mind slips into the environment by default. If there were people walking around a mall, you would just be a viewer. But in an empty mall, your mind steps inside. It's suddenly you who would be walking these halls. You who remembers them, even if you've never been there. Liminal spaces turn into stage sets, and your imagination quietly becomes the actor. There's a split in liminal imagery. Comfort liminality is the soft yellow lights of an empty classroom, a mall in the late afternoon, or a quiet bus station. Horror liminality is endless back rooms, overexposed hallways, dead malls at nighttime, areas that are too large or too small. The difference comes down to three things. The time displacement effect. Some spaces evoke childhood simply by being set in that era's architecture. Carpet patterns, beige walls, CRT lighting. Your brain goes, this is familiar, even if it's not. Scale and proportion. If the room is too big, too small, or the layout makes no sense, the brain senses threat. You're not supposed to be here. Functional inversion. A space meant to be busy, empty. A space meant to be still, too large. A space meant to be safe, uncanny. Your brain relies on context. When context fails, the primal part kicks in. Comfort or horror emerges from how badly the context is broken. If you grew up in the 90s or early 2000s, there were tons of anonymous public spaces built in that era. Malls, arcades, schools, rec centers, all of which had incredibly distinctive corporate liminal architecture. They were designed to look like nowhere in particular. Combine that with the fact that childhood memories are often fragmented. Snapshots of corridors, play areas, waiting rooms, and you've got the perfect recipe for emotional deja vu. When you see a liminal image, your brain grabs those old fragments and tries to match them. Sometimes it gets a false positive. Sometimes it fits too well. And suddenly you're homesick for a place that ever existed. It's nostalgia without a source, a memory with no origin. Many liminal spaces resemble dreams, endless hallways, rooms looping back on themselves, familiar but wrong layouts. This connects to how the brain builds mental spaces during sleep. When we dream, the brain doesn't render entire buildings. It constructs fragments and stitches them into incoherent but emotionally loaded environments. Liminal images mimic this construction style perfectly. Empty, non-personalized, architecturally ambiguous, emotion first, logic second. So the moment we see a liminal space, it feels dreamlike, because it's built like a dream. And since dreams rarely have clear origins, the space feels like a memory you should have, even if you know you don't. There's a strange comfort in liminal spaces, a stillness, a break from overstimulation. Most games, videos, and social feeds bombard us with information. Liminal spaces offer the opposite, an empty canvas. They give you room to breathe, to project, to imagine, to remember. In a world with too much noise, liminality feels like a quiet room you can step into. Some people even find them therapeutic, a form of aesthetic meditation, a place to feel something softly, vaguely, and safely. Others chase the fear side, the uncanny unreality, the feeling of being alone in a world that's not quite right. Both are valid, and both are deeply human. At the heart of it, liminal spaces feel like memories you never lived because they reflect the emotional residue of places you have been, not literally, emotionally. They echo waiting alone, wandering, becoming, being between versions of yourself, those forgotten summer nights, those childhood transitions, those dreams you wake from but can never fully remember. They're mirrors, and what you see in them is yourself. Your childhood, your fears, your longing, your quiet, your past selves, your imagined selves. That's the magic of liminality. It turns empty space into emotional space. And in the end, liminal spaces aren't about architecture or lighting or analog horror aesthetics. They're about us. How we remember, how we forget, and how we project meaning into emptiness. They're doorways into boundaryless memory. And when you step into one, you're not entering a room. You're entering every version of yourself that ever felt a little lost, a little nostalgic, a little in between. They are the memories we never lived, because they come from a part of us that exists beyond experience. The part that dreams, the part that wonders, the part that feels before it understands. That's why liminal spaces hit so hard, and that's why we keep coming back to them.